Yeah, so I watched and then reviewed Jim and Andy the Great Beyond, was on a huge Man on the Moon kick, watched Man on the Moon, I was like, I want to talk about that too. Waste not, so here we go. Man on the Moon. So Man on the Moon is the biopic about Andy Kaufman. This is not Jim and Andy the Great Beyond, which is a documentary of the making of and Jim Carrey's role in Man on the Moon, which is the biopic of Andy Kaufman. This is the Milos Forman directed movie about Andy Kaufman starring Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman. When this movie came out, I knew nothing about Andy Kaufman. I didn't know who this guy was. I'd seen a couple episodes of Taxi. I was like, yeah, I guess he's the guy on Taxi. But the fact is, you don't have to know the subject of the biopic in order for a biopic to be interesting. That's what Man on the Moon does. It follows Andy Kaufman's life and his rise to fame, his rise to infamy, really. So Andy Kaufman was known for, like I said in my review of Jim and Andy the Great Beyond, Andy Kaufman was ultimately a troll before we knew what a troll was. He liked messing with people, it's apparent, and it's funny in a very dark way. When you're watching it through the eyes of this biopic, you know, you're like, he's doing it on purpose to get a rise out of people. When it was happening, people just thought he was an asshole. It was kind of cool to see it through the light of he wasn't necessarily an well, I mean, alright. Saying he wasn't an asshole is like saying any troll on the internet is like, they're not an asshole, they're just a troll. So the things he did make him an asshole. But it doesn't mean he was a bad dude. Jim Carrey's performance in Man on the Moon. Milos Forman, the director, said, I never worked with Jim Carrey. It was either Andy Kaufman or Tony Clifton or Foreign Man. And you don't really see the full extent of that until Jim and Andy the Great Beyond, but really, it's apparent that he really did delve into this role. Jim Carrey is gone, man. It's Andy Kaufman. Every year when the Oscar nominations come out, my uncle and I talk about the Best Actor nominations and the nominations as a whole. And inevitably, we talk about that year Jim Carrey was snubbed for at least a nomination for his role, and that is for Man on the Moon. That's right, no Oscar nomination for Jim Carrey the year this came out. It's strange, I don't know why. I really do feel he deserved an Oscar nomination, at least for his role in this movie. And I felt like that for the past 17 years. And the supporting cast is impressive. I mean, Courtney Love is Courtney Love. I don't know, I can't think of a scenario where I've seen Courtney Love in a movie and I'm like, only she could have played her. So she's the one who really doesn't stand out to me, but Danny DeVito as Shapiro, his agent. DeVito is great, and I think it's advantageous to have him in that role. Not only has Milos Forman worked with Danny DeVito before, but Danny DeVito worked with Andy Kaufman on the set of Taxi, so Danny DeVito knows Andy Kaufman. And Paul Giamatti as Bob Zamuda, Andy Kaufman's best friend. I love Giamatti. I'm waiting for him to get an Oscar because he promised that if he ever got an Oscar in his speech, he would thank Howard Stern. I just want to see a bunch of old people's minds melt. The Academy just looks like they opened the Lost Ark. But this is a couple years after he was on Private Parts, so he played Pig Vomit, Howard Stern's boss, a total asshole. Then he goes to playing Bob Zamuda. It really does show the range in Paul Giamatti. Not just range, but it shows that he's really good at comedy too. Be it biopic, dark comedy. What you see Andy Kaufman was doing is ultimately building his Andy Kaufman cinematic universe, if you will. He wanted to create a contained bubble of entertainment like he did in his bedroom when he was a kid. Andy Kaufman's the good guy, then he created Tony Clifton, the villain. Tony Clifton going on to the set of Taxi is one of the best things I've seen. Then he wanted to be the villain, so he did the women's wrestling thing. Then Jerry Lawler steps in, and really all of it was just a ruse. It was just a farce. It was bullshit for entertainment, but it was bullshit for entertainment for the sake of Andy Kaufman's entertainment. And it really shows a man walking the line of who do you want to entertain, the audience or yourself. A lot of this was entertainment for himself. It looks like it was pretty good entertainment for him too. I don't know, you're trolling the entire world, getting a rise out of everybody. If that's what Andy Kaufman was going for, well then he succeeded. Where the movie starts to falter is really, it is biopic 101. It really is the path you've seen 100 times before in other biopics, or movies in general, but maybe you see it in a lot of movies because that's generally speaking how it goes. If someone just climbs to success and that's it, now they're successful, it's not really interesting enough to make a movie about that. I mean, it can happen, it's just not the most interesting path. We like damaged people. Andy Kaufman was definitely a damaged artist. And the movie does start to lose momentum after the whole cancer diagnosis happens. Granted, how much momentum is it supposed to keep? It's a cancer diagnosis. It's not supposed to be a fun time after that. I'm just saying the build-up before that was so much more interesting than, all right, now he has cancer, now he's dealing with it and it sucks. I liked him messing with the studio execs before that. I like him messing with the vertical hall to mess with people. Guys, in the end, those shortcomings aside, Man on the Moon is fascinating. It's entertaining, really well acted, well directed. It's a look into the mind of someone who truly did have a unique mind, especially for his time. Some liked Andy Kaufman, some didn't. This movie really shows the person behind the facade. If for nothing else, by the end of this movie, you feel like Andy Kaufman's madness is because he truly understood the world in a way that a lot of people don't. And I feel like a lot of that's rubbed off on Jim Carrey, seeing him in Jim and Andy the Great Beyond. And I really do believe a mindset like that truly is meant to be alone in the world. world. It's not nurtured by people. People just think you're crazy. They think you're a nut. If for nothing else, they think you're an asshole. So you have these people that see the world on a different level than a lot of other people in the world, and they're forced to talk about it with the people who can really relate, which are themselves. Lonely existence, really is. And by the end, this movie really does make me personally think of my own mortality. I mean, I think about my funeral a lot. I don't know if that's morbid. I just do. I think about what will people think? What will people say? How will people feel? In the end of this movie, I'm always left with that feeling of, I hope my funeral one day is half as uplifting as Andy Kaufman's funeral in Man on the Moon. That's all I can really hope for in life. There's some people who love the movie. Some people think this movie's all right. I'm one of the ones who loves it. I feel like if you watch it, you'll laugh, you'll be entertained, you'll be fascinated. So watch it, let me know what you think. Or if you've seen it, Man on the Moon, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.